Welcome back to another episode of the Pentacast Podcast. My name is Andrew Bella, your host. Alongside me is finally Ryan Sellers.
It is good to be back.
Man, it's been a while since we've seen you.
It's been about 6 weeks.
Yes, so good to see you, Ryan. Also on the couch is also another stranger, Dolly. Say hey. Hey, Dolly. She's back. She had some children, and now she's back with us.
And now they've been stripped from her.
Yes, now she's been trafficked back to our house, so she's back here. But also on the couch is Ty Hollinger and Josh Kimbrell. Thank you guys for joining us once again. Everybody who may be tuning in, listening, however you are consuming this podcast, we want to say thank you so much for making us a part of your Monday morning or whatever day you may be listening. So, Ryan, I guess we'll start with you. We'll catch up with you. How has everything been going, man?
Splendidly. Incredibly busy.
Yeah. Well, I guess we should title this episode The Interview of Ryan Sellers, since it's been so long since he's been with us.
Yeah.
But since you've been gone, we've all been busy. But we actually did several interviews.
Yeah.
And
They were all great.
They were all wonderful,
I
man.
did watch.
Different perspectives on 3 different interviews. You had Ethan Nettles, who had a church background and ran away from the Lord.
Yeah.
And God never stopped running towards him.
Right.
Incredible testimony. And then you had Matt Albritton,
Yeah.
who never knew anything about the Lord, but was pursued by God as well. And then you have Sister Leah Metcalf, who it was the icing on the cake.
Leah's was awesome. I
Yeah.
mean, I've known her my entire life. And she is one of those people who's just a consistent and a meek and humble person.
Yes,
She's always there, but if you don't see her, you don't know she's there.
that's right.
And then she got on this episode and just opened the floodgates
Yes.
and just poured out God's goodness. And
Yeah.
It was a great reminder.
Yep.
I like Matt's. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed Ethan's as well, but just people you don't know hearing a story you've never heard before.
Yeah.
Which with Leah's, I didn't really know the whole story, but theirs was like completely new.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had something in common with Matt because you don't believe in God either.
Okay. Yeah.
Dude, I'm not kidding you. During Matt's testimony, when he said he was just mad at God, I was like, maybe Josh was atheist.
Matt never said he was mad at God, didn't he?
Well, no, he said, I wasn't like one of those that's mad at God or something like that.
He said he was a true atheist.
Yeah, he just didn't believe
And I mean,
in God.
I'm just sitting in the back, just like, man, I've never been there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy how you hear these kind of testimonies, and that's what I love about our platform is you get to hear from people, like you said, people you don't know. Don't really have any other connection to them other than Christ. And you start hearing their story and realize, man, there's some amazing people out there that have
Yes,
went through
sir.
a lot of hard things, but it's refreshing to me to see how God pursues everyone in the different walks of their life. You follow me? And I know we talk a lot about how different our lives were and are still different, but to see everybody in a different walk of life, you meet the ones that you go to church with and you hear their stories, or you're supposed to hear their stories, but there's so many amazing people out there in the world that have awesome stories that we just don't go to church with.
Right. I think we'd be floored to know the miracles that we're surrounded by on a daily basis.
Oh, man.
Every time we walk through Walmart.
I'd say Ethan was probably my favorite. Just how blatantly honest and
Yeah.
upfront and transparent he was with everything.
That's refreshing.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Haley sat in the back through Leah's, and she's actually related to Leah, if I'm not mistaken. And she said that she cried during that one. She
Yeah.
said just rehearing some of it, hearing about
Yeah.
Sister Leah's mom,
Yeah.
said it made her tear up.
The 3 confirmations that God gave her was just amazing.
Yeah.
Because when we're going through a trial, obviously I've never had cancer. May have it now, I just don't know.
Yeah.
But anytime you're going through a trial, you are looking for God to show himself to you. And for her to be able to, first of all, and
Recognize it.
to recognize it sometimes in the moment. She said, I knew when this happened that I had made the right
And she
decision.
stood on it in
And
faith.
Exactly. Sometimes it's easier in hindsight to see how God was working things for you. But I think that definite confirmation in the midst of the storm
Amen.
is miraculous.
So we were talking about something before this episode got started, and we were talking about the declining church attendance.
Yeah.
And for believers, you know, I think it's really, really important what we do here on the podcast, but also not just us, but everyone who is a Christian to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. All positive, no negative. You know, you can't have anything with people and there not be negative. Okay? So people are people. But if your main focus is to see souls won for Christ, what's the best way to do that? And that's to share the good news.
To
Because-
constantly be trying to encourage somebody.
Exactly. So every testimony that we've heard on our platform was so that somebody who didn't know that individual could hear what God did through that person. And so what we've been able to do these past couple of years has been really awesome in sharing other people's stories and also just our personal walk through our Christian lives as well. But we were talking about the decline in church attendance. And I'm not talking about missing services. I'm talking about people that literally go, I'm done with church. I don't want to go back. In 2020, it was down 50%.
Well, that's believable. I mean, you had the pandemic.
Of course.
And what's concerning, you know, the pandemic was the pandemic, and we all had to take drastic measures from a church perspective, you know, about gathering together and what we could and couldn't do. But what's concerning is how many people haven't come back.
Haven't returned.
I'm not talking about just our church in general, but I'm talking about the church in general. How many people have, during that trial that we all went through together, have said, no, I can live without it.
Well, that's what they kind of said, especially, I guess, around our church area. They said the ones who are dedicated to the church, they're going to push through it. They're going to make it.
Right.
And they're going to want to come back.
Right.
So I guess it's just kind of proven whether or not people were coming out of habit.
And
Yeah, for sure.
you know, you probably did have some people who were already looking for an excuse.
And
So-
that was
and
that
was their
tip of
opportunity.
the iceberg, yeah.
Yeah.
So not only do you have, you know, the people that won't return, but then you have other situations. But from a younger person's perspective, this is what I wanted to ask. And this is, number one, this is not us figuring this out. This is what I love about our podcast, because we're like, hey, we could be wrong. And
Probably are.
probably are. We're going
I
to,
am.
I mean,
you know,
you definitely are, Josh.
right?
And I'm not going to say I'm
Well,
wrong.
we can stand to be corrected. And that's the way I think everybody
and,
should
and
be.
please, if you have a different opinion, let us know.
Well, yeah, of course. And if you're mean, just pray through about it. But there's something that attaches me to things when I'm involved in them. I'm attached to work, number one, because I love my job, but number two, because it pays my bills. So
It
there
supports your
is
family.
Yes, there is such a massive responsibility on me to make sure that I provide for my home. As a young person, honestly, when I got saved, I never had an issue with being faithful to church. Never. I never struggled with that.
Right. Me either.
Never did. So there's obviously a decline through generations because the proof is in the pudding. Church attendance is slacking off, and it has been. This isn't like, hey, we're blowing this.
Right.
You know, this is a breaking news story. Church attendance has slacked off, and it's directly with young people.
Mm-hmm.
Now you see most things that are geared towards young people. What is it about y'all's generation that you guys would say, this is why our generation probably does not attend church the way that the elders did?
Don't want to cut out the lifestyle. The same way that Ethan said that's why he ran. It's because he just wanted to live his life.
So, Ty, on your point, don't want to cut out the lifestyle. In your opinion, is it better to be respectful, if that's the case, be respectful of the church and say, hey, I'm a sinner, I'm going to do my own thing, or is it better to go and party on Saturday night and then be at church
Well, it's
Sunday
not
morning?
good to be lukewarm, is it? To
No.
ride the fence. I mean, you can't live that double lifestyle. If you're going to be one, I'm not going to say I'm going to I'm not gonna say it's right to be completely in the world, but
Right.
you shouldn't act to
Yeah.
be in the church.
I've got a problem with young people and adults these days who think that it's okay to go clubbing Saturday night and then show up at praise and worship on Sunday morning. I've got a problem with that.
Well-
I think God does too.
Yeah.
What I was thinking about is like, as far as this generation and like young people, I think like you have a lot of like just getting out of anything you don't have to do. Like, okay, a lot of times, you know, you got school, you have to go to school, but you'll find a way to fake being sick or whatever to stay home and get out of it sometimes, you know, the few times you can get.
Just
Like-
trying to get out of things that
Like,
if you can get out of it,
You don't
you'll get out.
you don't want responsibility. That's probably a lot of it.
it's like you go like at work, right? Like a lot of people who, you know, a lot of our generation will find a way, you know,
to get out of working.
yeah, or do you,
To do a hard labor job, specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like trading stocks, crypto, stuff like that. Stuff you can do at home.
Super
little-
easy.
little effort.
yeah, it's the least
It's a farce, by the way.
least
The path of least resistance.
yeah. It's like, I mean, I was getting there, yeast something. I was getting there, but like that, like, you know, if it's something that requires a lot of effort, it's very easy for, like, I know me in general, or if it's even if it's not a lot of effort, just like something, you know, you don't particularly just, you know, you might not feel like doing. It's very easy just to be like, you don't want to do it.
Do you see that is pathetic?
Oh, I mean, I'm not saying it's.
I mean,
not,
as
right.
as slothful as it sounds, it's
It-
honest, and
it-
you can't.
It is, and it's the truth.
I
It
mean,
is
the
the
truth.
I mean, from my perspective, I'll be honest and transparent. It is easy to get into that mindset.
Yeah.
To your point, Josh, I've got to be at work Monday through Friday. I've got to be there. All right. For me, I got to be at work Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night.
because that's your responsibility.
That's my responsibility. Now, church. Okay, one of the kids is sick. I don't want to get anybody else sick, and I don't.
Mhm.
It's easier to stay at home,
Yeah.
and that ain't gonna cut it.
It's very easy to do that, you know.
But we view church as optional.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So where did we get into this mindset that church is a 2 times a day on Sunday, and no matter what, you have a midweek service? And some churches actually have church during the fall on Saturday nights to give the young people something to do, but really it's the older people that come, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it, a lot of the
When-
things
when did that
geared towards the
tradition-
youth
Yeah.
is older people coming.
And
And-
the youth not being there, which is terrible.
So,
Or it's like the young people, and there's like a generational.
Oh,
or
yeah.
an
I feel
age
like
skip.
Andrew and our generation, we are working. We are in the prime of life.
Yeah.
You know, just striving to keep
make as
afloat
much money
and make as much money as we can, keep afloat.
Me, I just want to pay my bills and live.
And then, you know, you got young people who haven't really fully entered the workforce, full force.
Yeah.
And then you got old retired people that they ain't got nothing else to do. I didn't
That's
mean
the
that-
truth.
I didn't mean that as harsh as it sounded.
Yeah.
but
No,
it
that's
is-
the truth.
It is the truth.
Like I
But-
said, though, and I'm sorry to cut you off,
No.
but the responsibility that you feel to get up and go to work,
Mm-hmm.
the responsibility that I feel to provide for my family, shouldn't we have a greater responsibility?
to the Lord.
To the Lord.
Do you feel like
Absolutely.
more of a spiritual and church responsibility now that you have kids?
To me,
That-
I look at it differently.
Yeah.
Ryan, you can speak for yourself, but in my opinion, I don't look at my allegiance to the church in general. I look at my allegiance to my worship to God. And wherever he puts me, whatever church that is, I want to be able to be willing to help and assist in areas that I can. You know, can't do it all, and neither can the pastor. But my allegiance is not with a church organization. My allegiance is with my relationship with God. So when we say attendance to church, it does matter what you do when you get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not just walking through the doors. Although, you know, if it's a dark, deep, dark battle, that's all you can do is just get there. I would say that my approach is multifaceted. I totally agree with what Andrew said. my allegiance as a father has to be to make sure that those 3 kids and my family as a whole gets to heaven.
You have to be a spiritual compass
I
now to your
have to
family.
be a spiritual compass
Yes,
to them.
you have more responsibility. It's not about whether it's not like, okay, I don't feel like going today. It's like I have 3 children.
I have to set an
that-
example.
I have to set an example. They have to know that this is
Not an option.
not an option.
It's became more responsibility for you.
It is.
Well,
And
I mean, that's a good thing because at that point,
it is
if
a
you
good
set
thing.
that guideline and that boundary early on in their life,
Yeah.
when they get our age, or maybe
they're founded. They
Yeah.
have a foundation. Me also. I mean, I've been raised in the same church
Your whole
my
life.
whole life. So my dedication is to that church. It's not just to that church, but
you have roots there.
my foundation is there. That's where I plan to be buried out
That's
there.
where
in that-
God planted him too.
right there in that hot sun outside New Corinth. But that's me. And then even a different level of that is forming, maturing now is the association that we are a part of as a
Yes.
whole. That's a whole nother level. And I have reached the point where I see the importance of the whole movement. Now, on the flip side of that, my Christian walk is bigger than just our association. And I want, as a father, I want my family to make it to heaven. As a up-and-comer, I want the whole movement to make it to heaven.
That's why things change generationally. Ryan puts emphasis in places that his grandpa probably didn't, vice versa.
Right.
So over time, churches adapt and they change. Some
It's all
good,
bec-
some bad.
It's all
Right.
because people change.
People
It's
change.
a matter of perspective, where
Yeah,
you are in
right.
life, and what
That's
you
right.
view as important.
That's right. But as far as attending, though, you have to have some form of connection, a tie there, and
It's important. It's important to gather together with like-minded people.
you know,
It strengthens you. When,
and I will say this because we do say this a lot. It's important to get with like-minded people. It's also important to get around people who love God that may not see things the way you do.
yeah, it's important to think outside of your little box.
It just blows my mind though when people, and just like the pandemic, when people find a reason to give up on God, it is the quickest and most effortless thing that they do. But it's almost like, did all that stuff that we always talked about, how he did this, did that, help me here, help me there. It's like all of that immediately gets thrown out of the window just because somebody did something or said something. It blows my mind. Well, it did Paul too. I mean, so attendance wasn't just an issue in 2020 and today. Attendance was an issue even back when Paul was trying to build churches. Now, he said these words, which he wasn't talking about attendance, but still the same thing that draws us away from the house of God. He says, I marvel at how so soon you are removed of him, the one that called you. Talking about, I marvel at how quickly you can forget of how good he's been to you.
Exactly.
And so if I'm going to church, and this might be helping me more than it helps anybody, but if I'm going to church because I want my pastor or certain people in the church to know that I'm loyal, if being a father isn't enough, if I'm looking at people and saying, I want them to know that I'm loyal to this church, that helps me none.
It's not the right reason.
But if I'm going to church because I want my kids to look at their dad one day and say, what mean these stones? What mean these stones? Let me tell you what they mean. God was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. It wasn't an organization. It wasn't a group of people, although
They did help me.
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I say the folks at Blanchard, Trinity Holiness Church, when I got saved, I literally thought that I was around nothing but angels because my heart was in the right place. Mm-hmm. My heart was cultivated. Those weeks that I was in rehab before that, God was preparing me to accept his son. And so all of the things happened, but my allegiance never was with people. It was always what he did for me. Look at the woman in the well. She goes off back to her hometown when Christ completely rocks her world. And she says, come see a man who told me all I ever done, all I ever did. And the people in just the next chapter, or the couple chapters after that, I believe, they look at the woman, and this is recorded in the Bible. It says, we don't believe now because of what you say, but we believe him for what he did for us.
Yeah.
So that, to me, you want to grow your church, you start talking about the goodness of God. I'm going to give a little bit of advice here. When we get up behind a pulpit, or we get up and start telling people, well, you know what, we're missing a bunch, but, thank the Lord, we're going to worship with the ones who are here. It's really not even necessary to even mention that, honestly. It's really not necessary to mention that, because the ones that want to be there are there. Mm. And God knows the true worshipers, and he knows why we're there. There's been a lot of services that I was there, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then some of the greatest blessings that I've ever gotten were services that I didn't want to be there.
Almost talked yourself out.
That I was too busy.
Yeah.
That I was too busy to be at church, and I made a deliberate effort to be there.
Yep.
And God sees that.
And you know what?
And he honors it.
You know who I'm reminded of when we just talk about church attendance and just reminiscing on some of these testimonies? I'm reminded of Jonathan Smith, that said that when he found out he had cancer, he was in the altars. He was at the church every single day. God, I need something. And he was looking for something to carry him through.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to me.
There's a sister that goes to our church, and I say this a lot. And it's Ma B. She's about 86, 87 years old. And she's not able to be at church a lot. And
I want her on the podcast.
Oh, man. She'll shout the whole time. What her testimony, as we've all heard, when she makes it back to church, she said, I can feel the Lord the same at home as I do here. And that's wonderful. And I fully believe that is the case. However, it is not the case for me.
Or me.
I have to be at church.
I've got to have people around me that want me to go to heaven, and I want them to go to heaven.
Amen.
Forsake not the assembling of yourselves together.
Amen.
It's important. But I'm reminded by, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have kids to push me to go to church, I'm not talking about every function, okay? I'm talking about the services that you can attend. Why am I here? What did he do for you?
Yeah.
No, I do not want to get out of bed and go to church because I owe it to brother or sister so-and-so. That doesn't get me out of bed. What gets me out of bed is I'm coming to worship
A Savior who's worth it.
who's worth it.
Yeah.
If that's and if I'm too lazy to get out of bed for that,
You need
or
to get to
if
an
my
altar.
attendance is
If you
I
get-
was waiting for COVID to leave that, then you really know where your heart is.
Yeah.
If you think that he's not even worth the responsibility it takes to live for him daily, or to go to his house for service, for worship, he's not.
And remember, this is something that the disciples, even when they were hand in hand with Christ, he said, come to the Garden of Gethsemane, pray with me. He literally, at that moment, had the weight of the entire world. The Bible said that when he was praying, they became as great drops of blood. Mm-hmm. And he stops praying for just a minute, and he sees Peter over there snoring. He goes, you couldn't pray with me for 1 hour? Peter, I have your sin on my back. He's agonizing. He's just asking for help. He's just asking for a little appreciation. If you're listening and you're feeling convicted, you're not alone. When we go, what's our mindset, man? He's worthy. He's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And everyone listening and everyone talking in this episode has been totally guilty of not taking it seriously.
Absolutely. There have been a bunch of Sunday mornings that I'm saying, what we eating for lunch? And then there are hopefully more times, definitely more times.
What are we eating at the Lord's table?
What's the Lord fixing to feed me?
Yeah. Man, mindset is everything.
It is.
Mindset is everything.
It is.
You go into the morning, just like this Monday morning, this airs. Do you wake up? Some guy asked this question one time. He said, do you wake up and say, good Lord, it's morning? Or do you wake up and say, good morning, Lord? It matters. Your perspective matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why are we doing what we're doing? I don't know. I have no idea. Well, you don't have any attachment to that.
That's right.
What are we doing? Let me tell you what he did for me. That's the power of a testimony. That's the power of a testimony.
On my way to heaven. That's what we should be doing. We love you. We hope you have a great week. Over and under.